y'all doing today? Man, I really don't like the camera on this HP stream, but gotta work with it for now. It's more of a podcast, right? Most of my subscribers listen. They don't view me, so I guess it'll all work out. Welcome to Trucking with Old Snapper. And of course, I'm Old Snapper. That's my CB handle, my nickname. Uh, I answer to it. Holler at me if you see me out on the road. I'm going to get a little bit personal in this video. I realize I'm about 150 videos in to this YouTube thing. I try to help drivers for the most part. I get an enjoyment in life out of helping people. But in this thing, I realize I haven't told y'all who I am, or where, a whole lot about me. I've got a few videos where I drop a little bit here and there. But I do realize from watching some of these other trucking channels that you don't throw it all out there. Somebody else is going to dig it all up for you and put it all out there. So I'm going to be straight up with everybody from the jump on who I am, where I come from, how I got into trucking, what I did before trucking, some things I like to do at the house, and I'm just going to tell you all a little about myself. At the very end, the last part of this video, y'all are going to want to watch that. I'm going to tell how I got clean and sober off of drugs years ago, and that's a pretty interesting story. But anyway, my real name's Morgan, CB handle Snapper, or Old Snapper. I'm originally from South Texas, small town, Port Lavaca. Raised between there, California, and Louisiana. I lived in all three growing up. I got my cigarettes out because as I get more personal, I'm probably going to want to smoke. I'm not one to like to talk about myself a whole heck of a lot, but I know sometimes people want to know when they're learning something, who they're learning from, who it is. You know what I'm saying? And I can't blame them. I mean, I'm the same way. I want to know who I'm dealing with. So we're going to get it out there in this one. I spent a lot of time as a kid in and out of the system, in and out of juvenile detentions, uh, state schools, different things like that. I talk a little bit about that in another video, so I'm not going to get into all that. But I was rough as a kid, involved in different groups and different things, selling drugs, you name it. I've been there, done it. But anyway, as an adult, I started to kind of straighten up in my mid-20s, but not fully straight, kind of about like that. But anyway, before trucking, I was an electrician. Well, sort of. I did heat tracing for both process and freeze protection. And I did steam tracing as well, which is a form of instrumentation in chemical plants and power plants. I went to trade school, ironically sent by a judge. I went to Job Corps and learned electrical there, and that's what got me in the door with that career. I did that up until my mid-20s, mid to late 20s, and that's when I came into trucking. I worked my way up to supervisor. I was a journeyman or a foreman sometimes. Um, I did installations. I did troubleshooting, wiring up panels and controllers to operate those different systems within the chemical plants and power plants. Basically, heat tracing is either a wire or a piece of pipe. Well, let me break it down. Heat tracing is a wire that goes on a piece of pipe, and it's either meant for freeze protection or it's to keep a chemical at its chemical compound. Some chemicals will change their matter makeup if they heat up too much or cool down too much, so that to maintain a certain temperature. You have a series of different kind of cables, for chemicals and different things like that. to keep those pipes with the product inside of them maintaining their chemical composure. Sometimes, in some applications, mainly in sludge and heavy product, they'll use what's called steam trays. That's a small, either stainless or copper pipe that they run steam through, and it just keeps the pipe hot. It keeps that product warm. That's why it's used on heavy products like sludge, asphalt, different things like that within the refineries that make these different products, oil refineries and different things like that. But cut that off so the truck doesn't turn on. But that's what I did. All right, I worked for companies like Tyco Thermal Controls, Thermon, uh, Greg Industrial Insulators, GII out of Longview, Texas. Most of that work is up north. A lot of traveling. Um, I was actually home less than I am driving a truck, but I made probably twice as much money, and that's no joke, at least. And even today, like today, I was making more back then doing that than I am today driving a truck. So it's quite a bit of a money difference. Now the question might come up, why am I not still doing that? Good question. All right. One, those jobs are short. You know, they tend to be 3 weeks to a couple months, and then they're done. All right. At the time, whenever I got out of it, I just went through a layoff, and the last job I did was actually in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And some of you drivers can see the plant from 380. If you see them two huge stacks that are out there, you got steam coming off of them. That's ADM, that's Archer Daniels Midland. They make ethanol. Well, they built a mirror plant, basically a plant that was exactly the same as the one that was existing right across the street from it. I worked on that project out there with Tyco Thermal Controls. When that project ended, there wasn't any work left. I was going to have to take a layoff. The economy was bad, so I came into trucking. That's how I ended up in trucking. And I always wanted a truck. I enjoy this job more than I enjoy that job, by far. But I like the money of that job. So, I mean, I'm kind of torn between it all the time, you know. Over the years, I have gone and done a few electrical jobs. Um, you know, I did it last year. I left Creek for a little while. I left in, I think, August. And then I came back in January. And that's what I was doing. I went and did one of those jobs. It was a few months long. It was right by my house. Um, Pay was awesome. You know, making 2,200, 23, 2,400 a week take home, and being home in my bed every night. So obviously, I went and did it. I tried to take a leave of absence from Crete, but that didn't work out because it was going to be too long. So I ended up basically having to quit, go do that job, and then Crete was kind enough to hire me back when I came back out on the road. So I do those jobs still from time to time. Um, I wouldn't want to go back to it full time now because the environment has changed. And I'll give you a good example of that. The last job I went and did, I was hired in as a journeyman, which is basically a field supervisor, pretty much. I mean, journeyman just means you know what you're doing. And every journeyman has a helper. My helper sat in an air conditioned van while I carried all the tools and ladder and material out to where we were working in Formosa. And that's just one little example. That's the kind of crap you got to work with if you're going to work in that line of work today. All right. So no, I don't see myself ever going back to that. It's this newer generation just they don't have it. It's not in them. They step out from day one thinking that they should be making 100,000 a year to be a supervisor, and it just don't work. So all the old hands like myself end up actually doing the work, and and everything that goes along with it, and it sucks. It sucks really bad. But that's why Old Snapper is not doing that. And I can't get a passport, so I can't do the jobs in Canada. So I mean, there's a few problems that entail with that line of work, and trucking just works out better for me. All right, so that's why I came into trucking. The economy was bad, and to be honest with you, I thought trucking paid more than it did when I first came into it. Boy, was I wrong, especially back then. Um, I started at Stevens Transport. I worked there for 4 years. I spent some years bouncing around. I worked for a bunch of different companies. Um, I eventually went to purchase a truck. Did that for a little while, leased on with a little company out of Northeast Oklahoma that's not open anymore. The company's out of business. Big Dog Trucking. Uh, I ran my own freight off of load boards for them doing that. I dispatched myself. Basically just used his numbers. Paid him a percentage for using his numbers. And then I worked my way back around. I wanted to become a company driver because I wanted to retire one day. And I tell that story of why that all came about in another video that I previously done. If you want to hear that, you can go check it out. It's where I describe Creed's purchase program. If purchasing a truck, I tell a story as to why that's not for me in that video, and that's why I got away from being an owner operator. I want to retire. I want the insurance. Kind of changed my direction of what I was doing in trucking. But I don't knock all the guys that are out there doing it. I still do videos and try to help those guys. I got friends that are brokers, so I still do videos to try to help those guys as well. All right. Everybody knows that has followed me for any amount of time that I got an organization I founded back home, South Texas Recovery. It's a loosely put together thing, but we work with anyone that's trying to get clean off of drugs. Work with guys coming home from prison, help them find a job. Um, Everybody, help homeless, help them try to get resituated and back up on their feet. We do all kinds of things. Here's how that came about. All right. Years ago, I was working a job, BP Chemicals in Texas City. Same year BP blew up. I was out there when that happened. All right. And probably going to light a cigarette. But anyway, I hate talking about this, but it's what made me who I am today, you know. But anyway, I was in a hotel, Super 8 motel, right there off I-45, right near the town of Hitchcock. Matter of fact, it's the exit you got off of 45 if you wanted to go to Hitchcock. I believe that hotel's in Lamarck, Texas City, Hitchcock. They're all right close together in that vicinity. Um, at the time, I was doing cocaine and on a regular basis. I was doing it at work. I was doing it all the time. I was young. I was in my 20s. I was married, my first wife at that time, and we were off on the weekends. But I was telling my wife that we were working weekends. I was not a good husband. Wasn't a good husband. Not a good father at all. Um, my wife thought we were working weekends. She thought we were working 7 days a week. She didn't keep up with my checks. She didn't really know. All she knew was the bills were paid. And that's the way it was going down. Well, me and a buddy of mine, we go score some coke. I was probably doing an 8 ball a night by myself. And I don't remember what we went and got, but we went and got a pretty good little chunk. And sitting in the hotel room there, doing it and BS, and we worked together. We worked on the same project out there, and talking about BB chemicals, talking about what we had going on, where we were at in our phase of that project out there, and different things like that. You know how it is well, if you've ever done coke, it sets off all the happy sensors. So you talk like crazy, 200 miles an hour about everything. Tell your whole life story in 5 minutes. Anyway, I began to not feel well. I didn't know where I was at. Didn't know what was going on. I started throwing up blood, and I can remember most of that night, but I was very confused. Um, the guy that was with me, I'm not gonna give his name because he's still alive. He straightened up since then as well. He continued on. This was my very last time to ever do drugs. I remember putting a cold rag around my neck, and I didn't want to go to the hospital because I didn't want to end up going to jail. And it was just a bad night. It was really bad. I was real shaky, clammy. My friend took my cell phone. This was back when cell phones were just coming out. He took my cell phone and he cleared out all my messages. He cleared out any kind of anything in there that could be incriminating because they fully expected me to die that night. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I thought that was it for me too. I thought I was done. The few moments of clarity I had that night, I thought that was it. I thought I'm done right here. My wife's at home pregnant. She doesn't know what I'm up to. I'm in this hotel down here getting high, you know. Anyway, they all leave. They leave me there. And they took all the dope with them. Everything out of the room. Room was clean. And I remember pacing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I was like kind of coming in and out of it, like in and out of reality of what was happening right now. You know, I'd have moments like, where am I at? What's going on? And I'm going to tell you now, I feel bad for people with Alzheimer's because that's a really, really messed up feeling when you don't know where you're at or what's going on. And it was horrible. It was horrible. I remember laying in bed and I was closing my eyes. I was getting tired. My heart was racing still, and they'd already been gone a couple hours. And I stared at the roof, and I remember thinking as I was getting ready to go to sleep that this might be my last night on this earth. What my kids were going to go through. I had an older son. I had another daughter that was older, you know, with an ex, not with my current wife. You know, what was my wife going to think when she got notified? How would this affect my daughter, who wasn't yet born, with her? Um, you know, my choices were in chain reaction about to affect a whole lot of people, and that was hard. And I remember even in that moment being sad about everything that I was doing that was going to affect everybody else. So I knew once I died, it was over with for me, but the pain just begins for all those around me. So I eventually drifted off to sleep that night with those thoughts in my mind. And I'll never forget how relieved I was when I woke up the next morning. I remember my eyes opened up. I could see the sun coming through the big window up front. I was still laying on top. I didn't even get under the blankets. I just laid on top of the blankets, fully dressed, because I did not expect to make it. I thought they were going to find me in a hotel room dead. I didn't want them to find me in there naked or in my boxers. A couple of minutes goes by, and I'm feeling good, man. I got my snap back, feeling all right. I mean, I feel a little weak and woozy. Hadn't eaten, not fully 100, but I was feeling better. A couple minutes goes by, and a knock on the door. I thought, what the heck? Who's here? I thought, oh crap, you know, or is that the law? That's your first thought when you've been up to no good. It's the law, you know. Jump up, I peek through the window. It's my wife. My wife is sitting outside. Open the door. Long story short, she realized we weren't working the weekends. information and finding out what was going on. I ended up divorced. Never touched drugs again, ever. And I tell this story in a little more graphic detail every time I'm working with someone to try to help them get sober. And it's hard to, because every time I tell the story, I kind of relive it, and I don't like thinking back on those days. I wasn't a good person at all. And I spend the rest of my life trying to make up for some of the things I've done. And one of the ways I get that is from helping others. That's why one of my favorite things to do on the road is train students. I enjoy training students. Um, and I enjoy putting my all into it because it makes me feel like I'm giving back. And it makes me feel good. It's kind of a selfish reason. Um, Same thing with this YouTube channel. I enjoy helping other drivers. You know, I don't want to see drivers make some of the mistakes I made whenever I first came into the industry. Um, and same thing with the drug addicts that I try to help. I don't want them to make those mistakes. I don't want them to encounter a night like I had because they may not make it, you know. And that was that was a night I don't ever want to repeat, and I don't ever want anybody to go through the feeling of going to bed wondering if they're going to wake up in the morning. But that's my story. That's how I got to where I'm at. That's how I got to all these years out here driving. Um, I had tried to enter trucking way earlier than that. Probably, oh God, 6, 7 years before I actually entered trucking. And I was sober for a long time before I ever entered trucking. But I ended up having an old warrant. It was a warrant for my arrest that went way back. And when I went in to get my CDL permit. I ended up going to jail in San Antonio, Texas, for an old warrant. So I didn't get to enter trucking the first time. Got out of jail, worked all that stuff out. Uh, I went back to work in the plants because they had called me on a job. A few years goes by, and then I ended up encountering what I told you about a while ago, where the economy was bad and that job ended there in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So I went ahead and I entered trucking at that time. But if you know somebody out there who's having trouble with drugs or alcohol or anything like that, send this to them. You know, I don't know if it'll help them or not, but it's worth a shot. If you yourself have a problem with drugs or alcohol, man, email me. You know, I'll talk to you. Hit me up on Facebook. I'd much rather try to help you, and I'm not just going to let you fall off like that. We all go through things in life. We've all made bad choices. You know, it's part of life. Your past doesn't make you who. It doesn't mean that you're going to be that way forever. You know what I'm saying? You can come through it. You can get sober. You can get better, and you can start making better choices. Trucking's awesome. Now you got to be sober, and you need to be sober for a while before you come into trucking. That way, if you're thinking about doing that, that way you know you're going to stay sober. You can't be out here doing drugs. You'll hurt yourself or somebody else. You'll end up in prison, or you're going to cost your company a lot of money. There are so many disadvantages to it. It's not worth it at all. So if you're thinking about coming into trucking and you've had a drug history, please make sure you get sober, 100% sober. And you're sober for a few years. I'd been sober, oh man, let me think. When I came into trucking, I'd been sober 7 years. Whenever I came into trucking, I'd already been sober for 7 years. So give it some time. You come into trucking, you hit me up, man, and I don't care what time of day or night it is. If you feel like you're going to use, especially if you're in a truck, message me. If I'm awake, I'll answer you and I'll talk you through it. I don't want to see anybody go through that. Um, but anyway, it's not perfect. I ain't nobody special. Um, there ain't nothing extraordinary about me. I don't have this bright, blasting personality. Um, I'm just mean, man. I'm just snapper, and I just like helping people, and that's why I'm here. If you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. And like I said, if you know anybody this may help, send it to them. And I hope all of y'all stay safe. Keep between the lines. We're coming up on holidays. Speaking of that, there's going to be a lot of people on the road who have been drinking. Be aware of that type of stuff. Take your time. Don't try to pass somebody who's swerving in the road. There's no reason to be in a hurry. You can ask any trainee I've ever had. And one of my mottos is always, being in a hurry will get you killed. And in our line of work, that's 100% fact. Being in a hurry will get you killed. Take your time, make good choices. Love all y'all. Appreciate y'all for watching, and keep trucking.